Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Alexis Carlson, and I am a project manager with Northwest MHTTC. On behalf of Northwest MHTTC, I'm very excited to welcome you today to our presentation with Alex Martin. Alex is presenting Stigma, Shame, and Self, and this is the 5th webinar in an 8-part series from Alex. First, I'd like to give a little bit of introduction to the Northwest MHTTC and the MHTTC network. The MHTTC network is a national network. It's supported by SAMHSA. The purpose of the network is to disseminate and help implement evidence-based practices for mental health issues to the workforce. The goals of the network include supporting mental health-related evidence-based practices, heightening the awareness, knowledge, and skills of the workforce, fostering regional and national alliances, and providing and connecting you to free trainings like this and to technical assistance. The Northwest MHTTC is based at the University of Washington in Seattle. We provide training and technical assistance to Region 10, which is made up of Alaska, Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. Our area of focus is on evidence-based practices for serious mental health issues such as psychosis. However, we also provide training on a variety of topics such as integrated care, suicide prevention, diversity and equity issues, school mental health, peer support, trauma-informed approaches, and others. We serve a large workforce within the behavioral field that includes behavioral health and primary care providers, school and social service staff, and then others whose work has the potential to improve behavioral health outcomes for individuals with or at risk of developing serious mental illness. We fulfill our mission through a variety of activities. We do live events like this one that we record and post. We offer virtual learn communities. We have free self-paced online courses. We have our newsletter and resource section on our website, and we also connect you to other training centers and to their events. If you'd like to learn more about our opportunities and our online courses, please be sure to visit our website and to sign up for our newsletter. This is our land acknowledgement. It's important for us to notice how the Northwest MHTTC sits on the land of the traditional lands, of the Duwamish and the Coast Salish peoples. We honor the many cultures in the lands in our region, and for the vast region that is Alaska, Idaho, Oregon, and Washington. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the people who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. At Northwest MHTTC, we ask that everyone be respectful and be mindful of the language that they use. It's our intention to always choose language that promotes recovery and use language that is culturally appropriate. A few housekeeping items. We've made every attempt to have today's presentation be secure. If something goes unexpected, we'll follow up with you with your registration information. We will have our audience muted with videos off today, just due to the large number of participants. We are recording this, so we will be able to make this available to you after the fact, and we will also provide a copy of the slides usually within about 2 weeks after the presentation. We will be able to provide you with a certificate of attendance today, but we do not offer formal CEUs for this event. You have a few different ways to reach out during the presentation. We have the chat that is down at the bottom of your screen. Anything that you send to the chat will be visible to all panelists and to all attendees. This is a great way that if you just want to check in, say hi, let us know where you're from, go ahead and drop that in the chat. If you would like to provide a question to our presenter, you can use the Q&A feature, and that will help us track your questions as they come in and answer them during the webinar. Finally, we have our evaluation. It's very important that we hear from you. So we ask that everyone do take a few minutes today or shortly after the webinar to share your thoughts and share your feedback. We use that to be able to report back to SAMHSA about our activities, and it helps us plan future sessions. Our disclaimer simply states that while SAMHSA supports this, it does not take any official position on the content. So now let's get on to the best part of the presentation, and that is our presenter. Our presenter today is Alex Martin. Alex has been in the health and social service field for over 20 years. Alex was drawn to the LGBTQI2+ community in their mid-20s while working for a national HIV prevention study with youth called the Young Asian Men's Study. This exposed Alex to the great work of HIV workers from other organizations and how community-based programs are critical in reaching out to the most vulnerable populations. Alex was inspired to start a private practice to address the special needs of the LGBTQI2+ and Black, Brown, Indigenous, and people of color, particularly those who identify as queer and Trans-Asian and Pacific Islander people who are also dealing with unique and special issues that intersect race and culture, gender and sexuality, such as coming out, spiritual conflicts, cultural dissonance, gender transition, navigating social situations at work and other environments, interpersonal relationships that range from intimacy to friendships, and understanding relationships with non-LGBTQI2+ partners and on. So, Alex, thank you so very much for being here today. I am thrilled to hand things over to you. Thank you for joining us, and we're excited to get started.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alexis. All right. Well, that loading. I did not expect that image to pop in. Good, thank goodness I'm not wearing the same jacket. Thank you to the wonderful folks at Northwest MHTTC for having me again and creating this time with all of us. A moment for learning, strengthening our minds, expanding our hearts for compassion and passion in our fields and in our communities, especially with each other and for each other as fellow professionals in the helping field. I saw some folks all the way from Carterville and our hometown of Issaquah here in Washington State. And I saw someone say hello from West Virginia. Welcome, welcome. Thanks for sharing your day with us. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good day, everyone. Again, my name is Alex Martin. I primarily use she pronouns, but he and they are totally okay. I'm honored to share space, safe space with all of you and hope that you've managed to submit your tax returns or requested an extension as we begin our time together. And I'm so grateful that MHTTC is including it as well in their introductions. But I also wanted to say from a personal perspective that I acknowledge that I am on the traditional land of the Coast Salish people, the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people, past and present, and honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish tribe. And I invite you to honor the land that you are on, its people, past and present, the land that you and your family and your community have come to settle on and make a home. Just a little background again for context. Again, I'm a licensed social worker with a concentration in integrated health and mental health from the University of Washington and a licensed substance use disorder professional in the state of Washington. Much of my work is centered on health disparities that impact marginalized groups while embracing them and while embracing harm reduction and acknowledging implicit bias. As a proud genderqueer and immigrant from the Philippines, I intend to share my professional and personal experiences with the hope of bringing diverse perspectives into an often cisgender, heteronormative, white, and male-dominated world, be it at work or society at large. As we dive into stigma, shame, and self, think about how much of your own experiences, particularly how the personal manifests itself into your professional world, plus the social influences. And as we navigate through this discussion, you will notice different types of foods from my homeland of the Philippines. At first glance, they look delectable, and they are, but they also represent the shame and stigma that some of these viands are gross and icky from the American lands, like fish sauce and balut. Today, we're going to digest a smorgasbord of topics. Pulutan are appetizers. We're going to nibble in some background content, followed by kamayan, eating with our hands, after washing and sanitizing, of course, and not just tasting it, but feeling it. And merienda, desserts made by you. You're going to have an opportunity to get your sweet tooth to sink in to your questions answered. By the way, happy Mental Health Awareness Month and National Asian Pacific Islander History and Heritage Month. And how appropriate are these things, right? Today's webinar goal is to identify the social impact of stigma and shame on the self and identify tools to overcome the suffering and silence. If you've been with me at previous MHTTC webinars, then you'll know I will guide us in a very short activity to normalize incorporating mindfulness into events such as this webinar and including therapeutic time with our clients and patients, and hopefully even in staff meetings, particularly with leadership. And I would personally be so delighted if you're able to add this into your personal routine. Even just a few minutes can do wonders. This mindfulness meditation activity is designed to assist in exploring our experiences in the present moment. It is focused on quieting the mind while deepening awareness of the mind, body, and spirit connection. Remember, this is just a snippet, and I encourage you to take your time as much as you're able beyond our short time together. So let's begin. Before you enter into this mindfulness practice, find yourself in a comfortable seated position. Place both feet on the floor. Gently move your body to increase your comfort. Once you find that sweet spot, take a deep breath and long but relaxed exhale. With eyes closed or a soft gaze. Let gravity pull the body towards the ground and take another deep breath. And exhale with a soft as you become one with this moment. Inhale and soft exhale. Should you feel sensations, let them be. Be one with your body. It has served you well, and it has protected your mind, your heart, and your spirit. Give it gratitude by simply being where you are now. The here and now, and nowhere else. There is nothing to do but inhale and exhale. Gently move your palms, hands, and fingers towards your head, imagining holding your crown befitting your majestic self. Remember that you are royalty. Slowly shift your arms above you, stretch it towards the sky, a sky unlimited in potential and endless in possibilities, just like you. A gentle inhale, a soft exhale. As we complete the short practice, gently open your eyes and begin to connect with your environment, our environment, and slowly take notice of discoveries, memories, images, voices, sensations, thoughts, or feelings that bring joy, peace, and enlightenment. Perhaps a smile. Remember them. And a gentle inhale and And in a few moments, let's come back together. All right. Thank you, everyone. As I prepare this session, I am constantly reminded that all of us are very familiar with our topics, but sometimes we all need a little reminder to be mindful. Remember that you, yes, all of you, are all experts. We just need a little nudge. And speaking of experts, surprise, I've invited my colleagues, peers, and friends in the community to join us for a dynamic conversation. And I know this wasn't in the narrative online, so this is I hope to be a very pleasant surprise for everyone. So Boya Hua, she, her pronouns, MSW, LMHC, LSWAIC, is a licensed mental health therapist who speaks Mandarin and English. She moved to Seattle from Shanghai, China in 2015 in order to pursue her graduate study at the University of Washington School of Social Work. Back in China, she had been actively involved in community engagement for over 6 years. She founded a sexual diversity education workshop called LGBT Free Talk and co-organized Shanghai Pride. She is the author of a book called Voices of LGBT in Shanghai, based on interviews with 20 queer local folks in Shanghai, China. Currently, she provides culturally sensitive mental health services at Seattle Counseling Service, an LGBTQ specialized community mental health agency. She's also very enthusiastic about literature, music, body movement, and being close to nature. And joining Boya is Hugh Pham, Dr. Pham, MD, MSP, HAAHIVS. He, him pronouns, is a family physician. He was born in Saigon, Vietnam, and calls New York City his home. He was raised by a single mother. His own immigrant experience inspired him to care for immigrant and refugee communities. In NYC, he was involved with GAPI MNY, an organization that works to continue to support and empower queer and trans Asian and Pacific Islander Americans. It was his formative experience that continues to motivate him to work with gender diverse communities. He worked in public health before starting medical school in Chicago and then moved to Seattle for residency in family medicine at Swedish Cherry Hill. Currently, he works at International Community Health Services in the International District here in Seattle, a safety net clinic where he primarily serves patients who are immigrants and refugees. He speaks Vietnamese, English, and Mandarin. Hugh provides full spectrum family medicine, including obstetrical services, HIV care, pre exposure prophylaxis or PrEP, and gender affirming care. He also works at Nova Wellness Center, a school-based clinic caring for gender diverse teens. When not working, you can find Hugh in the International District, or as we call it, ID in Seattle, supporting the neighborhood's restaurants or coffee shops, eating pizza, and spending time with his boyfriend. But before we grab their thoughts on the subject, and I know you can see them right there on video, let's get some more context here. What is shame? According to Merriam-Webster, shame is a feeling of guilt, regret, or sadness that you and we have because you know or we know that we have done something wrong. The ability to feel guilt, regret, or embarrassment, a dishonor, a disgrace. Anybody remember shame, shame, shame? GOT. And the renowned Dr. Brene Brown defines shame as the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. Whereas stigma, as defined by the Oxford Dictionary originally in the late 16th century, a mark made on the skin by pricking or branding as punishment for a criminal or a mark of subjection, a brand, a mark of shame or discredit, a stain. But remember that if you ever feel this way and can relate to this, remember that it's a stain, that with the right tools, we can remove that stain. So let's chow down. I'll take the first bite, but please feel free to type your questions into our Q&A box as you feel inspired. And I'll keep an eye out for those while we navigate through this conversation. So I know I did a quick intro on Boya and Hugh, and I want to allow them to say hello in their own beautiful, amazing, strong voices. Boya, Hugh, good morning, good day, good afternoon, wherever we are in the universe. Hi.
Hello. Hi. Good morning, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me here.
Absolutely. It is my personal pleasure to have you join us and share this safe space with everyone across the country, and perhaps even Canada. We often have folks from Canada as well. Now, let's start with something positive. And the question is to the both of you. How do you celebrate your accomplishments as professionals, but also including personal achievements in whatever setting you choose? Let's start with you, Boya.
Sure. Yeah. I think celebration is always like a big part of my life. I do it every day at work and in my daily life. For me, I think the most common one would be just sharing or simply talking about my accomplishment and achievement, things I feel proud of, I'm excited about. I tell my friends, my family about something I learned at work and how excited I feel about it. I invite them to feel the joy with me. But I think especially I celebrate by acknowledging it to myself, like after having a great session or even just a very tough session, I would say to myself, well, that was a hard one.
Mhm.
You did your best. Good job. And yeah, after a hard day of hard work, usually at home, I play some cheerful song and sing with it. And yeah, and just, I don't know, give myself a treat.
Mhm.
Really let myself know that, I've done my great job as
Thank
a
you.
therapist, as a person today. Yeah.
That's
Mhm.
amazing. And I love that you said that the celebration is part of the culture. Thank you for sharing that. Hugh, what
Yeah.
about you?
Yeah, this is something that I think about a lot, in terms of kind of celebration overall, and especially in acknowledging of, Asian Pacific Islander History and Heritage Month here.
Mhm.
As Alex shared, I came from an immigrant family, and I was raised by a single mother, right? And I feel like I live in a society that maybe tends to favor like individuality more. But I feel like I have grown up in communities that have supported me throughout my journey, up from, when I started school up until now as a physician. And I think yesterday, actually, my nurse told me that like there's a few patients who are transferring to my panel, but I think she said something really poignant. She's like, "Your mom must be really proud of you, huh? Have you shared any of this with her?" And I think that really hit a spot for me yesterday. And I remember calling my mom afterwards
Mhm.
that wherever I am now, despite my personal and professional accomplishments, it's never my own. It's usually communities that have supported me here. And that's how I feel like I celebrate, right? It's like I don't celebrate on my own. I celebrate with individuals and folks who have really supported me to be where I am today. But also, Alex also shared that I live in the International District. This is my new home here in Seattle. So how do I find ways to support the small businesses here, and especially the Asian Pacific Islander community here in Seattle overall? So that's how I celebrate. I'm just reminding myself that I am here where I am today, not because of anything I did that's special, that makes me more special than other individuals, but really in terms of the importance of family, chosen family communities that have supported me.
Mhm.
Thank you, Hugh. I want to tie that back to what, and you also said it, you said the same word, celebrate, celebration. But I love the way you stated that it's about individuality versus community, and how sometimes in different cultures that can be a struggle. But in many Asian Pacific Islander culture and traditions, it's a communal celebration that we bring in either the family or any type of group setting, that it's a celebration of not just of ourselves, but it's a shared celebration, and that how that gets to be celebrated with each other. And I know that it's not always the same for every culture, but it can certainly translate to other cultures. It could be mirrored in a different capacity or way. Yeah, and I can totally relate to that. I'm going to do stop share, and I want to invite and encourage folks that are watching, feel free to change your view on Zoom to gallery, which will then allow you to see all of our speakers highlighted, or you can do speaker view, wanted a bigger video of the current speaker. All right, so I'll come back to Boya. Boya, as an immigrant and being multilingual, how do you deal with social stigma now living in the US? Like stereotypes, bullying, for example.
Yeah. That's a good question, a hard question. Just from my personal experience, I would say in Seattle, I'm even less aware of people's social stigma around me because I intentionally chose to live here to build an environment, a community that's kind of clean. Because in China, I felt I was exposed by a lot of stigma toward like queer, gay people just like me. Holding hands with my girlfriend was not fun back then. And do this kind of job is hard because people have a lot of stigma toward mental health. But here, I feel stigma is more invisible. People seem to know the standard answers most of the times. But you know, sometimes when a client fired me, I don't know if they did it because I'm a foreigner, because my English is not good enough. Although in general they're pretty polite, I also had the typical experience where American asked, "Are you Chinese?" That was a pretty strong white guy. I remember. I only had that experience for one time. Luckily, in the past 6 years of living here, I had that on a bus, and it was very embarrassing because I am Chinese, and I had to get off the bus earlier because they kept asking me questions. I felt sad for a little while because nobody on that bus called that person out. And a lot of people saw that. And people usually say Asian people are quiet. Well, on that day, everyone was as quiet as an Asian. And yeah, I definitely once in a while feel anxious. I mean, even now, like I can feel my anxiety was coming up. I was asking myself constantly if I was competent as an immigrant or adequate enough to do my job. And I would take a breath. I actually would take many breaths. And then I would remind myself who I am, who I usually see myself as. I think, well, I'm not more than you. Definitely can learn a lot from you, but I'm not less than you. I'm just another human being, as equal as you are. You are as equal as I am. I will say reaching out to people who understand me, who can relate to my culture and my identity, reaching out to my community really helps me recognize who I am. Again, I also work with a lot of clients who are immigrants who have similar backgrounds, who are persons of color. who are Asian specifically. And we definitely share fear, share our insecurity when talking about how scared we feel when we were walking on a street, worrying about being attacked because the way we looked. We have fear, but then I think when we talk about together, we felt stronger, and we can also be curious together, like curious about people who might attack us. Like, who are they? What they are suffering? What make them so unhappy and willing to take so much pain to hurt another person? So I think, having that discussion, that can help
that
us.
automatic thought process as providers. We try to understand why people are doing what they're doing, regardless if it's good or not so good. But earlier, you were absolutely giving me goosebumps, and I can totally relate. You know, here the question really was, being an immigrant here in the U.S., but even your experience back in China was also very similar, being queer identified, because there was still that, that otherness, and when that invisibility and that concept of others speaking for us, and it's generally people who are not like us, right? And you spoke about, this foreigner that, like, I'm constant, the perpetual foreigner, because we look at a certain way, a different way. I recall when I have to think about self-esteem, either talking with fellow professionals or even patients, when we say, oh, my English is not good enough, I often bounce it back, well, your Mandarin is not good enough. Maybe not in that confrontational way, but more about that, well, actually, how about the parallel of that, right? Yeah, sure. Like, with Spanish-speaking clients, I've often found that it's not because we don't speak, say, English perfectly or Spanish perfectly. It's often just, it's the accent that gets in the way. But really, people who speak a different language and, say, try to speak English, it makes sense if we just listen, right? And it's, oh my goodness. Obviously we're not going to tackle the Stop Asian Hate per se, right? Because it's been an ongoing thing and we are obviously discussing it. But this idea that we associate competency by our immigrant status, and I know other folks out there that are listening and watching, I am sure they can relate that they're also correlating their competency with their other identities that's not part of the mainstream. So I thank you so much. And lastly, I want to summarize what you said too about how Asians are stereotyped as being quiet, but when it comes to oppression, other people are also quiet about fighting it. And that was very powerful. Thank you, Boya. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I want to flip it with you. Slightly different question. Dr. Pham, and I say this with pride, because and again, we don't ever see, people of color being a certain status, right? In your practice as a physician, do you see a difference in Asian Pacific Islander and people of color spaces versus mainstream medical settings? And if so, what are these observations? What are these experiences? Basically, how API and POC versus white communities see doctors.
Yeah. Well, completely. I see there's a huge difference. And I think for just the audience to know, I work at a community health center that we essentially 80 to 90% of all patients are people of color, and 80% of all patients needs some kind of linguistic or interpretive services overall. And I think a lot of it comes down with trust foremost and safety, right? And I think that we have been trained, and myself included, in a medical system that has perpetuated so many inequities and racist approaches to how we actually care for our patients overall. And through the years that has been built up, and it's only now that we're starting to slowly unravel some of this and kind of undo some of it. But it's really, for anyone who's trained anything, it's kind of like the certain trainings that are forced upon us. So I think just kind of being cognizant of what they are, whether they're implicit or explicit biases that we have to really kind of retrain ourselves, right? And then for me, as a doctor working at ICHS, which is the Safety Community Health Center here in Seattle, we accept all patients regardless of their insurance status. And I really treat a lot of my patients as family. And because I do speak Vietnamese, a lot of my patients are Vietnamese speaking. And I think for them, it's really important to see a physician who is not just a bilingual physician, but also bicultural. And I think this is where I tie in my immigrant experience as well, because usually the first question that I ask them is, where are you from in Vietnam? And I think we have some kind of connection a lot of the times. And I think they will tell me in terms of how they were brought up and stuff like that. And I think that's the way that we connect, right? And I'm not really sure if that is being expressed in other settings as much. And again, I don't work in other settings, so I don't really know for sure. But I also, too, there's a lot of intimacy in the ways they share things with me in terms of honesty, right? I have a good amount of my patients who are elderly. And I think they have now come to share a lot of their experience with racism. But I think more recently, their experience with anti-Asian hate, given in terms of how many of our elders have been kind of beat up and killed in the community overall, and what that means for their health. Someone I saw yesterday share with me that she came in to see me for a diabetes visit, and one of her sugar markers was not really controlled in any way. And I asked her, what's been going on? And she really shared with me that she used to walk 3 miles a day, every day, as a way to really move her body. And then until recently, she's been really fearful. She lives by herself, and she's really scared to really walk out unless she really has to go get groceries or something else. And I think that's really scary for a lot of elders, right? Especially for my patients who don't speak English. And I think, I don't know if they would connect in the same way with other individuals per se, but I think when they share things like this with me, I'm able to really see and feel what they're feeling too. And even me as someone who's pretty able-bodied, who is overall consider myself like young, and I live in the international district, and even then I'm fearful for my lives, walking around and being more alert. And I think when your body is on such high cortisol level constantly, it's really hard to rest. It's really hard to be the self that you really want to be, or even taking care of your own health. So I think this is why it matters. I think it's why it matters to see folks who may share some commonalities with their patients or who look like their patients, for that kind of connection that's beyond the medical that we do day in and day out.
Yet again, another powerful response, and I'm so honored that both of you have taken the time to share this space with everyone here with us for this webinar. And people are commenting, by the way, in the chat box if you haven't seen this. And I loved how you focused on the distinction of being bilingual versus being bicultural. And what comes to mind are providers who, yes, have that X factor that can speak another language, but can they understand the words beyond that and can understand it through experience? Because that is such a great point. And Terry mentioned that being the bicultural being a great point. Oh my gosh, yes, you just wowed me with that distinction that being bilingual or multilingual is not the same as being bicultural or multicultural. That is so powerful. And we often, point out implicit bias, but often we then forget how explicit those explicit biases are, right? So we really have to focus in on that as well. And I love how you switched it for me on that question, where are you from? From a person from the same culture or language, where are you from is a beautiful question, because it's an opportunity to actually relate, right, with that person, having the same narrative, having the same cultural experience. But when it's a person outside of your culture / community, the question, where are you from, is jarring. It's oppressive. I I lean to one of my mentors, Dr. Chung Suk Han, who is a huge resource and source for Asian Pacific Islander immigrant narratives in his body of work. The question, "Where are you from?" followed up with, "But where are you really from?" is not an innocent question when asked by a person from a different culture, because oftentimes, if not all the time, it's really embedded with, because you don't look like you're actually from here. So where are you really from? It's that othering. And that question, and I want to remind folks, if to challenge yourself, if you do ask that question, to really evaluate what that means for you when you ask a person from a different culture or community or language, when you ask that question as a provider, please know the impact of that question to the person receiving that question, because it can be so damning, it can be so oppressive, and it can be so painful and hurtful. We've got a question from Charity. The question is, as an adolescent, what was the primary support that you needed from the community, whether educators, peers, faith-based leaders, and so on, to make you feel empowered? And did you receive that support? Boya, who were your, who were your primary support as a young person, as an adolescent?
Mm. I spent my adolescence life in China, so maybe I can talk about my experience
please.
back then. Yeah, from my own personal experience, I think a lot was come from a couple of friends I really trusted, and the community I found out on the internet, and a couple of teachers I really that really like, who are really supportive, who really said like beautiful things to me, and who could really see me and willing to listen to my struggles. So I guess it doesn't matter what role you have, or which like type of support you're able to give to this adolescent, this young people, as long as you're willing to be there, to sit with
Mhm.
their feelings, to are willing to understand them. They will feel really supported.
Thank you. Hugh, what was your adolescent experience as far as your primary support? Was it
Yeah.
similar?
So I grew up in New York City, and I think, I've mentioned too, I grew up with a single mother family, and I think she has been kind of really my rock in terms of sharing a lot of different things, right? But I think identity is also complex, and support is also very complex. And I knew I was gay very, very young, and I think a lot of that comes into more of not so maturity, but in terms of complexity in my teenage years. But that was like my secret that I couldn't really share with anyone, because I haven't really met anyone who shared the experience as of yet, right? So that was the part of me that I was able to share with my mother for a real long time. So I think support, that's why I think it's so multifaceted, and there can be multiple individuals too for different sorts of support.
Mm. And how would so circle back to that, being both API, being Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, that sort of difference and similarity, having grown up outside of the US, but also, being growing up here in the US. Regardless, it's really finding that person or persons in your life, right? And it's quite common in LGBTQ culture and in community that and you might start hearing this, either you're already familiar for folks out there, or you might hear this from your own patients and clients around chosen family or families. This idea that you get to choose your family, because in theory, our families should be our source of nutrition, right? Not just physical, not just digestive, but nutrition for our minds and our hearts and our souls, really. So we end up as a form of resilience is to get that we get to choose our families. And I invite people to do the same. And in some ways, I could say that we get to do that actually. It's our best friends, right? Or our best friend, or our peers that are little cliques, so to speak, right? That those are our chosen families, right? Embrace that and take advantage that we have these people that celebrate us, right, on a personal level, but also professional level. The folks that will speak honestly to us. Doctor, you talked about the intimacy of trust and the trust of intimacy, right? Vice versa. So that's really powerful as well. We've got another question from Vidya. Uh, did you feel celebrated during your developmental years, just by your family or by others in the world outside your family? I feel like we're getting into like a family of origin and child development areas here. Who wants to jump in on that? I see your eyes going in that direction, thinking already. Let's have you start.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this, right? Because I think this goes back to our very first question, like what does celebration looks like? And as a teenager, at least, like doing well in school is essentially like what revolves around most of our lives, right? You're in school and then you're home. So it's either pleasing, quote, your teachers by doing well, or pleasing your parents by doing well, in that way, right? So, and in that context, what does celebration really mean? And I think for me is, well, my mom she worked really hard. Like most of the times when I come home, she's not even home yet. So I think for me, my celebration then was that even though I did well in a test, like I would just casually share with her, but really it's having that dinner together and really using that time to share our days and having that connection, right? Because otherwise, like I leave for school really early and then she wouldn't be home until really late. So the time that we have overlap is very few hours in between. And using food and nutrition as a way just to connect both physically and mentally. And I think that's what I did, and share a lot of that with her.
Oh, that's beautiful. I'm so glad you brought up food. It's around lunchtime on the Pacific Standard Time. Boya, what was that like for you during your developmental years?
Yeah, I was thinking about dinner as like a main celebration in my culture as well. And I think because I was also like I'm also a lesbian, and I was not out when I was in high school or middle school, and I was bullied when I was in middle school, and I couldn't share all of them to my family, and my grades are poor, really poor. And so I couldn't share that part. I actually like consciously try to hide that part when I talk to my parents, because like Chinese parents really value that. But I realized that my parents are still very mindful of like supporting me in other ways. I'm good at singing, so I think I remember, they will. I remember after I got like went at like a competition, like singing competition, they really just make effort to like make great food and have nice dinner, and they don't talk about things that are painful and focus on the things that they're really happy to for me. And I think a lot of Chinese families can be quite secretive, but I also see that as a protection like, because I can see the complexity, and I know we don't have
Mhm.
time to cover that, but but I do feel that's a way for them to share the respect.
Mhm.
Yeah, and really just to celebrate when it's time to celebrate. Yeah.
Back to that celebration again, and how, and that's, isn't that what provider mental health is really all about, is to celebrate ourselves and with each other. I hope that I am sharing this joy in my heart with all of the attendees right now. But I'm also so sad we don't have enough time, a very limited time. I do want to have you have the last words on, and also on a positive, inspiring, encouraging way. Again, thinking about our audience and about ourselves, our speakers, our panelists, being providers ourselves. What advice would you give or want to give to other providers, particularly POCs, perhaps other from marginalized groups as well, pardon me, particularly who experience shame and stigma, who may not feel seen or heard in their professional settings or communities? Basically, think of, or I'm asking for tips and tools that you can share with us, especially the ones that you have found yourself to be helpful in your respective practices. You want to kick us off, and then Boya?
Um, One of the things that I've come to embrace a lot is grace, right? Grace for myself. And being in medical training for, I did 4 years of med school and 3 years of residency. And during these times, you're always being told you're wronged. There's a lot of shame and guilt in terms of the things that you're doing. And I think during that time, it's thinking about myself, it's like, wow, I must not be a really good medical student, a good doctor, because I'm not doing great, or people think that I'm not good enough. Which I know to be false once I've come out of my training. And as a physician too, I acknowledge that we all probably make mistakes in some way or the other, right? And I think there's already people who are guilting us and shaming us already. But I think sometimes I do that for myself too. And most of the time we can be our own like worst critic. And taking a step back and telling myself that, one, I am where I'm supposed to be now. Two, I'm good enough. And then three, give myself grace for the things that I can do better, or the things that I don't even do well, but knowing that I'm doing my best at this point, right? Because I feel like, the perpetual question that I ask all the time is that, if my friend who was going through the same exact thing as I am, what words would I give them? And it's usually the words of grace, and the words of support. And I think for me to continue to do that for myself is really important. And I feel like grace is never a destination. This is always a constant journey. We go in of it and out of it. And how do we keep, on a day-to-day basis, think about that, right? Because I think for anything to be a destination, then I need to get there. And once I get there, I'll be fine. But I learned that that's never the case, right? Like when I was in medical school, I was like, once I get to residency, I'll be fine. Or when I was in residency, I was like, once I graduate, I'll be fine. But I know that that's not the case anymore. It's like, how do we on a day-to-day basis keep caring for ourselves and giving ourselves grace? So I've been thinking a lot about that, and thinking about that from different angles and perspectives too.
Thank you, Dr. Hugh. Boya.
Yeah. I feel like you already covered a lot of things I want to say. And, as therapists, we don't usually give advice. But to be honest, I feel like I'm struggle with that a lot. So I'm grateful to have this conversation. And I think just to sometimes when we feel like stuck, I really just have to remind ourselves that don't feel bad about yourself when you feel unheard or misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing your best. you're worthy and important in this field because you're rare. I mean, if you're POC, you're rare in this mental health and health field. And I will focus on the times that people did appreciate to me and the times that I feel mattered. And I will acknowledge those moments and just to remember that there will always be people who see you, who hear you, who think you're important, who want to keep you in their support system. And if they value and I think that means that my identity matters, my existence matters. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, we're so close in time. On that note, I want to share how much the both of you matter so much to me, not just in my professional life, but also in my personal life. I thank you so much for your, not just your expertise, but your grace, your humility, but your pride in the work that you do and the impact that you have on our community. And as a member of that community, thank you for your being role models and being such inspirations to my work as well. I thank you so much. And I hope that everyone felt the same way and that they get to leave today knowing that you have enriched their lives and vice versa, and vice versa. Thank you so much, Dr. Hugh Pham and Boya Hua. Visit them, check their organizations at Seattle Counseling Service here in Seattle, and also International Community Health Services. Thank you so very much to the both of you. I'm going to switch to just sharing our resources and references for today. Feel free to check these out. These will be available online. As you can see, I'm a big fan of Brene Brown, so there'll be a couple of ones in here. These are links and just some other resources. The ones that look like heavy research reading, it's actually just a handful of pages. So I know everyone's busy, so I want to be mindful of that. Also part of our self-care, we don't want to spend days reading something like this, but they are short snippets that I hope that you will find helpful. Thank you once again. I hope that I believe we got to all of the questions and I appreciate everyone's time. Lastly, I want to turn this over to our lovely folks at Northwest MHTTC. As always, thank you and salamat po.
Hi, everyone. I just want to give a big thank you back to Alex for being able to bring in our wonderful panelists today. A giant thank you to Hugh Pham and to Boya Hua for being so open about their experiences. I love so many of the themes that we heard today in terms of grace and celebration, family, whether that's a family that you were born into or if that is a family that you have built for yourself along the way. And the importance of being seen and how we can not only help ourselves feel seen, but also what we can do to help see others and lift up others. So it is a very hard thing to wrap up the presentation today, but we do need to do that. I'd like to invite everyone back on June 16th when Alex presents again on diversity and difference. Please be sure that you do save some time either today or tomorrow to complete our post-event survey. These are so critical to our work. And as always, please also stay connected. You can do that through our website. You can sign up for our newsletter. Certainly email us if you need to. We are always excited to be able to share more resources and want to thank everyone for their time today. So best wishes to all. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day, everyone. Take care.